So I did it at the City University of Hong Kong, and I first met Wilhelm at ISTAS 15 in Ireland, and it was a very chance meeting, but I was very happy to be in his seminar. He was talking to us about privacy in social media. Wilhelm, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy for the invitation.
Fantastic. You know, Wilhelm, I've been thinking a lot about your presentation back in November 2015, and it pretty much bamboozled me because I was thinking you were really wanting to build software that would enhance privacy within social media context. But you've submitted to us in our new special issue on unintended consequences of technology, a great article which looks at our moral intuition, or our lack of moral intuition with respect to technology. Could you tell us a bit about your article?
That's right. The article is kind of based on the presentation I gave and on the kind of questions that came up afterwards. What exactly is it that I'm talking about? So the article is kind of re-examining relatively recent findings in moral psychology particularly, which really reveals the way that human moral reasoning works, and that we tend to function in two distinct modes of moral reasoning. One being the very intuitive, and one being the kind of deliberate, conscious part where we really sit down and think about it and try to reason out the different arguments and so on. And the problem is that, which I'm introducing, talking about in this paper, if you don't have the moral intuition in the first place, it's really hard to progress to that second part, the deliberate thinking about these problems. And that's really a situation that we see right now with most modern technology, with black box technologies, where we look at it and we have no immediate moral intuition, and therefore it is really difficult to follow it up with moral deliberation.
That's absolutely fascinating, because when I think about my personal adoption of technology, when I'm in need of something, I tend not to worry about the implications as much, and to sit back and think about it. I just want this piece of software to work so I can go about my goal and do it. How does one develop moral intuition? Can you enhance it?
Yes, I believe you can to a certain degree. So part of these moral intuitions are biologically pre-programmed. Certain things we are just really good at acknowledging intuitively. So everything that goes to that has to do with facial expressions, for example, we are really good at reading facial expressions. Babies can do that very, very, very well. But there's also, so this is the innate, the inherent moral intuitions that we have. And in my paper, I'm talking about this innate, inherent moral intuition against pushing someone directly physically. So this is something that you do not have to know. What you come with. However, there's also the cultural conditioning aspect to moral intuitions. So you can also learn and train to have certain moral intuitions, or enhance them, or also to maybe negate certain moral intuitions that you might have, but which you might not find suitable for the 21st century. So in terms of technology, I think the most important part is to open up these black boxes, because most of the technologies really are black boxes right now. And most of them are actually deliberately black boxes, using proprietary software and so on. Even for the curious to be unable to know what it is doing or how it is working, even if they wanted to. But if we are able to kind of open up that black box and explain how it works, and really create a better manifestation of what it means, what the technology does in the everyday awareness of people, then you can train this kind of moral intuition artificially. You can kind of substitute the cultural intuition for the lack of the innate moral.
I find that intriguing because whenever I ask people, you know, tell me what is in a smartphone, they say, I don't care, it's just a black box to me, and I'm not that clever, how would I know that there's a GPS unit, there's a magnetometer, a gyroscope, an altimeter, all these very different sensors, and yet there's almost ignorance on the part of the consumer that we have no idea that most of us are carrying around these smart, ultra smart capacities and capabilities in our devices. So how do you get that point across?
It's quite difficult, but one of the methods that I'm putting forward in my paper, right, is a kind of moral intuition enhancing technique, which is to look at these technologies as if they were human, because we are really good at assessing other humans intuitively. Why not make use of our dispositions, of the way that we reason morally, and pull these very complex technologies, these black boxes, from this realm of the distant, the complex, the inaccessible, into our really comfortable space of moral intuition, and just pretend for a second that they are humans, if you're another person. So if you imagine what your phone does, quite undeniably, so recording all of your information, recording all of your data, as soon as you have one of these apps on any social network app. But even without the applications, there's good reasons to believe that, according to the Snowden revelations and so on, you can't be quite sure what exactly the phone is doing, even if you try to keep it as clean as possible. So if you imagine, instead of this phone doing all of this, imagining a human person walking around next to you and recording everything, listening to everything, and then taking that information and auctioning it on eBay and passing it on to whatever governmental agency. If you had a person like that, if everyone had this personal assistant walking next to them, I think they would be really bothered, and it would be immediately clear to them that what this person is doing is just absolutely wrong. And no matter of comfort or whatever good he can do for you would make up for this really negative consequences and what it means to your privacy.
I think that's fascinating. When I've done some work on trolls in social media, most of the trolls that continually hound and victimize individuals actually don't realize they're doing it because it's a virtual medium. And many of them, when they've been caught and the investigation has taken place, have responded simply to say, I didn't realize I was doing this to a real person. It was just an avatar, it was just a persona online. There was no human behind it. In fact, quite the opposite, there is. So I'm fascinated by your approach and the educational aspect of it. Do you think you might introduce programs in schools, for instance, for young people?
I think it would be a powerful intuition. If you there's a guy on the internet. I think he calls himself the surveillance cameraman. And what he did is he follows people around with a surveillance camera, and everyone immediately is super annoyed. And I think this kind of example, which is kind of a manifestation of what I'm talking about, right? It's putting it into practice. And I think if you can train people, or if you can educate people, and particularly young people, for whom social networks are absolutely unquestionable. There's no question for them to give it up or not be on them. It's not an option not to be part of this. So if you can use this technique, I think it might be a relatively powerful intuition, a relatively powerful tool of thinking for young people to realize what they want to do. I'm not sure whether that will translate into action and boycotting certain technologies, because it's incredibly difficult in the social context of these social groups, etc. But at least it might raise awareness, and then when the next election circle around, you might be voting for the party that has that aspect within their strategies or within their programs as well. You know, a steady increasing of awareness might slowly but surely bring about better technology that they can push towards a better technology. I think that might be one of the tools in the toolbox to get
You know, Willem, I think equally it could be used for engineers because often engineers can create in laboratories in a vacuum and they're not aware that they're building things that will have a huge societal impact and innovation in an existing device. And this is something that, you know, in core curriculum, in IT, in software engineering, in computer science, in computer engineering, we can introduce this as a phenomenon, and we could do role plays between the engineer and the user and basically say, you know, can you see what is happening through this observation? I think you've got a really, really new methodology that you're creating here in your laboratory at the City University. And I know you have a very rich background. I mean, I know this is a complex issue you're tackling, but you've got economic system development background, international studies, now ethics and moral philosophy, and you've molded that with your technology in hacking and hacker science. Do you think we need more interdisciplinary people to be creating new technology?
Yes. Let me answer to the engineering question first. In fact, I'm going to be speaking at the Forum for Philosophy and Engineering in Germany in about 2 weeks about exactly that issue, about the moral obligations that flow from the already enhanced moral intuitions that engineers should have, which I believe they do have to a certain degree, because better knowledge about the technology should enable people to make better moral judgments. And I fully agree. I think the responsibility on the engineer's part is quite significant. I think the biggest problem for them is because the rest of the general public doesn't appear to be minding what the technology is doing, that kind of allows them to cleanse their own conscience. Because if it was bad what they're doing, after all, everyone else would complain, right? And since nobody is complaining, that must mean that what I'm doing can't be that bad, even though they might be able to know that it's not yes. That this is not the case. So this is what I'm going to be talking about in that conference, and also probably going to introduce this method of thinking as if it was human, to really get the point across and raise awareness about the engineer's responsibilities. And in connection to my various backgrounds, etc., yeah, I think it's quite helpful to spend a lot of time with the very, as you said, interdisciplinary, very crazy hacker types and so on in the various hacker spaces around the world. Last year I went to the Chaos Communication Camp, which is this huge festival of technologists, hackers, political activists in the digital realm, so organized by the Chaos Computer Club of Katina, member, and it's quite interesting to talk to them. And many of them have already come to the realization that a lot of things that are happening in these technology design departments and so on are quite problematic, but they also find it quite difficult to get the point across and to do something about it.
Do you think we could ever, do you think we could ever overcome the barrier? And by the barrier, I mean this constant innovation and constant trying to upgrade. And back in 2000, I was working for a telecommunications engineering company. They called it working at web speed. And I kind of look back to that term that our CEO back then coined, working at web speed, and whether that does enable us to take a step back and to say, well, what if the human technique was applied in every conscious decision we were making? I sometimes think we're sleeping. We're unconscious almost. We become like zombies. And it's almost like next, click, through. I have it working. Now hurry up because I have to finish this next project. So we're not slowing down. We're just getting faster. Are you also saying we need to slow down because the human technique, not digital yet. The human technique espouses an analog thinking process.
Right. Right. That's a difficult one. I don't think we can slow down, which makes even if I were to wish that we could, and we should, it's impossible. So I think we need to work with the reality that we are facing, which is, as you said, ever increasing speed of technological progress, essentially. But even with the many different progresses, there are certain principles, certain general rules, certain general characteristics of whatever new technologies might come on that we need to be able to deal with. So one of the biggest problems, I think, and this is really, really novel in all of human history, because we have never had these kind of black box machines. Really, up until the middle of the 20th century, all machinery was basically mechanical. You could, at least in principle, relatively easily work out what is it doing. The most primitive would be the spear with a pointed end. This is a technology. It's really easy what this does. You don't need to be particularly educated to understand what the moral significance of that simple technology is. The same with pulley systems. As long as you can more or less at a glance figure out what it is doing, you don't have a big problem. But these black box technologies, these computers, the digital technology that we have now, which has physical component and then also the software component, which you really can't see, particularly in the case of proprietary software. This black box phenomenon is something new, and this black box phenomenon will continue to be more or less in the same form. So even if we have the next kind of smartphone, whatever is the next thing after this, smart contact lenses, yes, it will be different. It will be a different kind of technology altogether, but you have the same kind of black boxiness to it. And this kind of method that I was introducing or suggesting in my paper works on all kinds of black box technologies. It doesn't matter how further advanced it goes. And the same applies to other techniques, to other technologies that might arise. It's more about a general approach or teaching or raising awareness of a general approach to allow people to assess whatever you think comes up from a point of view that makes it easier for them to see what might be the moral significance.
So Wilhelm, if I ask you a question regarding the risk of not taking this human technique approach in the future, what might we see accentuated or happening in the future? What's the risk of not going down this path you're promoting?
Well, if you see who's currently in charge of shaping the future that we are looking forward to, these are all for-profit corporations. Right? These are all private interest groups who have one single imperative, which is not the betterment of human well-being in society in general. The imperative is to increase profits. Right? So you have already all kinds of business techniques that are quite questionable. The entire free model of social networks, where you're supposedly getting this technology or these capabilities for free, which is of course an illusion. You are the product being sold by that. You have planned obsolescence. Yeah? There is no reason to go and buy a new smartphone every year just because it keeps trending. So there is already a kind of broad scale manipulation of these companies, which is not really working for your interests, it's working for their interests. There is this phenomenon that Shoshana Zuboff in her upcoming book is calling surveillance capitalism,
Yes.
which is really very much about commodification of people. But it's going to go one step further, which is not just manipulating you, or making sure that whatever you might be interested in buying will be available for you to be bought and so on. But it's really the active control of what you will, or the shaping of your next preferences, what to buy next. So there's already very, very strong trends towards this really shaping of your the potential for app use is absolutely amazing. And if you think right now the smartphones we have, at least it's an internal thing. It's turn it off and put it away. Wait until the first body. Wait until we actually use one of our eyeballs for whatever smart eyeball might come around. Do you really want to have? Really want to make sure who is in charge of this eyeball, or will you end up being able to see only whatever corporation that made that eyeball wants you to see, or whatever the government it is in collusion with wants you to see, or through the city you might be able to see whatever they do not sanction. Right? So the potential is absolutely enormous. We really are at the outset of all of these technologies, and it comes down to our generation basically to make sure that we have at least in principle some good guidelines, some good ways to make sure that we end up in a future that is working out for the majority of people, not just small interests.
I think, Wilhelm, that's very, very wise. Back in 2012, MG Michael and I wrote a paper on skin-embedded technologies and the black box in the body. And we wrote that for Jeremy Pitts. Jeremy Pitts of Imperial College London edited a book called This Pervasive Day, and he was looking at Levin's This Perfect Day as a metaphor. And when you start looking at technologies, as you say, that are embedded in the eyeball or embedded in the subdermal layer of the skin, or in the tricep, or in your artificial hip, then we are looking at the Internet of Things almost taking on an ethereal aspect where we become like nodes in a larger network or in a larger system. And the embeddedness of these, what we've called the black box within the skin, underneath the skin, these implants which could be used for unique ID, for e-payments, for ticketing, for access control, then, as you say, put these technologies, far, far beyond. We're far away from the current mobile phone. Imagine the mobile phone, as you say, inserted in the body. So I'm very happy that there are people like yourself plugging into laboratories where they are able to have a big influence. And my hope is that there are people like you sitting within the Intel, sitting within Google. I'm sure there are many, but to be a bit more engaging as well with participatory users. Right now, what I see is live trialability. For example, Google Glass, 1,500 explorers, and sort of a trial on the run, so to speak. And we're not really getting the real users adopting these cutting-edge technologies. We're getting software developers and others. But how do we get real human technique embedded in the process of development is a great topic. I hope you continue to research it because your paper will be coming out in actually potential in September-October timeframe, and it will be for a student audience, tomorrow's developers. So thank you so much for your contribution. I don't know, do you have any final comments to make about your work?
Well, I hope that it reaches some people. Some people might read it, might find the reasoning sound, and might be able to make use of it. Positive.
Well, we're very fortunate. On behalf of Ramona Pringle and MD Michael and myself, Thanks so much for your commitment, and we look forward to the special coming out and having a good reflection on the dialogue that comes forth from these interviews. Thanks, Wilhelm.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.